Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the source material you're curious about, break it down, and give you the key insight quickly.
Yep, straight to the point.
So today we're diving into something you sent over a YouTube video called Why Hollywood Hates Its Own Fans from the channel Theory.
Right, and it puts forward a pretty strong argument about modern Hollywood, particularly how big franchises are being.
Okay, so what's the mission here? We're going to unpack that argument, look at the examples they give, and really try to understand the perspective they're offering.
Exactly. It's about understanding their take on this whole Hollywood fan relationship thing.
Got it. So the video kicks off with this pretty bold claim. Hollywood isn't really trying to please its audience anymore.
Yeah, it goes further, suggesting there's even a kind of, disgust is the word they use, a feeling that stories are made despite the audience, not for them.
Wow. Okay. That's a big shift from how you'd normally think about entertainment, making stuff people want to see.
It is. And they argue the audience has gone from being seen as this sort of community to almost a threat.
A threat? Why? What's the perceived problem with the audience, according to this video?
Well, the video claims that Hollywood, or certain forces within it, see the traditional fan base as problematic. Specifically, too nostalgic, too white, too male, too attached to mythologies.
Okay. So the loyal fans, the ones who grew up with this stuff, are now seen as an obstacle.
That's the argument being made, yes. That these attachments get in the way of where some creators want to take things.
And where is that exactly? The video says these big franchises, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Superman, are being used differently now.
Precisely. They use terms like a skin or a delivery system. The idea is the established franchise is just the package.
The package for what?
For ideology, according to the video. The message, the viewpoint, that becomes the main thing, not necessarily the story itself or, continuity with what came before.
Okay, so that's the theory. Do they give examples to back this up?
Oh, yeah. Quite a few. One of the first they bring up is the announcement about the new Superman.
Right. I remember that. John Kent, son of Clark, coming out as bisexual, getting involved in refugee advocacy, fighting climate change.
Exactly. And the video's argument isn't necessarily about those individual issues being bad themes.
It's about how it was done.
Yes. It frames it as being more about creating a moment, getting a certain kind of press coverage, scoring social point, rather than developing the character organically.
So the concern raised is that he becomes less a person and more a symbol, a mouthpiece.
That's the critique, yeah. A mascot for specific causes rather than a character you connect with on a, human level. It raises that question. Where's the line between updating and just replacing the core?
Interesting. What else did they point to?
Amazon's Rings of Power was another major example they analyzed.
Okay. That definitely stirred up a lot of debate. What was the video's specific take?
The accusation was pretty strong. They called it raiding Tolkien's work, basically using the names and the setting, but creating something fundamentally different.
Different how?
Well, the video argues it completely missed the feel of Tolkien's Second Age, that sort of slow, tragic, vast, almost mythological quality.
So what did they say the show did instead?
They pointed to things like flattening the cosmology, the divine influences, the Valar, replacing that sense of destiny with more modern psychological stuff like trauma arcs, driving characters, and also dialogue choices like girl boss quips that felt, jarringly contemporary. And then there was the timeline compression squeezing centuries of history into a much shorter period.
So the picture they paint is something that feels less epic, maybe.
Less
like Tolkien.
That's the claim. And what the video really emphasizes is the reaction to fans who raise these kinds of criticisms.
How so?
It argues that instead of engaging with the substance, like, is the timeline compressed, different tonally, the criticism was often dismissed.
Dismissed how? Just ignored.
Worse, according to the video. Label. Critics were called purists, gatekeepers, sometimes even outright evil or racist or misogynist.
The video suggests that was deliberate, like setting up an enemy.
Yeah, the argument is that it was almost designed to create backlash, which could then be framed in a certain way to shut down debate about the show's actual quality or faithfulness.
Okay, that's quite a claim.
Yeah.
Any other big examples? You mentioned Star Wars earlier.
Yes, Luke Skywalker, specifically his portrayal in the sequel trilogy.
The hermit on the island.
Right. The video presents this as another prime example of what they call contempt for the past, for the original trilogy and what Luke represented to fans.
So the contrast between Luke the hero, the guy who faced Vader, and the Emperor.
And the disillusioned old man drinking, was it green milk?
I think it was green, yeah. It was definitely memorable.
That contrast, the video argues, wasn't just character development. It was a kind of deliberate tearing down of the old hero.
And they see this as part of a bigger pattern.
They do. The video talks about a broader trend of moving away from strong, individual, father figures, leaders, mentors.
Replacing them with what?
With committees and vibes is the phrase they use. Sort of diffusion of authority and competence, maybe reflecting a discomfort with those older archetypes.
So it connects back to that delivery system idea, using the stories to make a point about leadership or heroism.
Pretty much. The argument is that things like, say, a lightsaber, which used to be just a cool part of the fantasy, now gets imbued with heavy symbolic meaning. It becomes a statement.
And stories become sermons.
That's the term they use, yeah. Pushing a message rather than just letting you explore a world and its characters.
Okay, so this all leads to a major disconnect, right? Between creators and at least some segment of the fans.
Exactly. And this is where the video argues things get, well, quite antagonistic. It suggests that fans who remember the old stories, who hold on to those original interpretations, are now seen as the threat we mentioned earlier.
The nostalgic ones, the ones attached to the mythology.
Right. And instead of debating the merits of the new directions, the video claims the tactic is often to smear these fans.
Smear them how? By using those labels again.
Yeah, framing any criticism of the new content as being rooted in some kind of phobia or ism. You don't like the new direction, well, you must be sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, whatever fits.
But the video makes a distinction here, doesn't it? It says the core issue for many isn't change itself.
Crucially, yes. The video argues the main complaint is often about a perceived decline in quality, that the new stuff is, well, bad.
Bad in what way?
Bad as in poorly constructed, emotionally hollow, narratively incoherent. That's a direct quote, I think. It's a critique of the craft of storytelling.
Not just, I don't like this message.
Yeah.
More like, this story doesn't work as a story.
Precisely. And they point to how failures are then explained away.
Like what?
Well, think about the Marvels underperforming at the box office. The video notes how quickly the narrative shifted to blaming misogyny among fans.
Instead of looking at marketing or the movie itself or superhero fatigue, maybe.
Or the Velma animated series, which got a pretty widespread negative reaction. The video points out this was often framed as purely an attack by anti-woke trolls.
So the audience gets blamed if they don't like something.
That's the phenomenon the video is described. And it argues this leads to what they call a controlled demolition of trust.
Controlled demolition of trust. What does that mean?
It means that basic assumption you used to have that the people making this movie or show want you to have a good time, want you to enjoy it, that assumption gets eroded.
Because if you don't like it, you're the problem.
Right. And the video even claims, quite startlingly, that some creators seem to almost relish making fans angry now, that provoking backlash is, like, part of the goal.
Wow. That's a deeply cynical take on the creator-audience relationship.
It is, and it culminates in this idea that these franchises, these stories that meant so much,
things that felt like home, connections to childhood.
Yeah, exactly, that they've been weaponized, turned into political weapons.
Weaponized how? To fight culture wars?
Essentially, yes. The video argues that Hollywood, or parts of it, isn't just asking for your attention anymore. It's demanding obedience, alignment with a specific world.
So you have to signal you're on the right side by liking, or at least not criticizing, the new content.
That's the implication, that these spaces that used to be fairly neutral ground where people with different views could connect over a shared love for, hobbits or Jedi.
They're not neutral anymore.
They've become battlegrounds, as the video puts it. The neutrality is gone.
Okay, so wrapping up the main argument here, the video idea theory presents is that there's been a fundamental shift from storytelling for an audience.
To using stories for what they see as ideological control or even re-education, a move away from entertainment towards something else.
So just to recap the core argument for everyone listening, this video's perspective is that modern Hollywood, particularly with big franchises, has changed its approach. There's this perceived disdain for the traditional fans.
Right, seeing them as an obstacle. And a shift towards using these beloved stories primarily as vehicles for specific messages, sometimes at the expense of narrative coherence or faithfulness.
And the examples we talked about, Superman's rebranding, the Rings of Power adaptation, Luke Skywalker's portrayal, these are all presented as evidence of this shift, evidence of prioritizing ideology and potentially showing contempt for the original fan base.
Exactly. It's a specific viewpoint arguing that the focus isn't entertainment or shared experience anymore, but something more like instruction or loyalty.
Which leads to a pretty provocative thought for listening right now. What does it mean if art, especially these huge cultural phenomena that so many people connect, starts to feel less like a shared story and more like a homework or a test?
Yeah. Think about your own experiences with these franchises lately. Does this perspective from idea theory resonate at all? Do you feel that shift they're describing, or do you see it differently?
It's definitely food for thought. And if you want to dig deeper into this specific viewpoint, the source is the Idea Theory channel on YouTube. They clearly have a lot more content exploring these themes.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. As always, we love getting the sources you send in, so keep them coming. Let us know what else you find interesting out there.
Until next time, keep exploring.